So yesterday we started off detailing the story of the Mitteler Rebbe's arrest and release. He was released yesterday. He was released on the day of the 10th of Kislev in the year Tovkuf Peches, 1827. Exactly 100 years before his great-grandson, the Frierdiker Rebbe, would be arrested and released by the government of the same country, the same area, Soviet government. And for the Mitteler Rebbe, we don't have any pictures. We have very much in the way of writings and chassidus and stories. We don't have a lot of Mitteler Rebbe's writings. The vast majority of them were actually burned in different fires that took place in Lubavitch. What we do have is still enough to fill a lifetime of learning and a lifetime of study with a great depth of the Mitteler Rebbe's chassidus. Many special anecdotes and stories would happen, whether in the Mitteler Rebbe's shul or all over in other places. In Mitteler Rebbe's kever. Right now, what we're discussing is the Mitteler Rebbe's arrest and release. So yesterday, we started listing off the reasons for his arrest. What caused the Mitteler Rebbe's arrest? Spiritually, the reason was because he was spreading the wellsprings and the teachings of Chassidus, things that are supposed to be hidden, spreading it in a way that's beyond limitations, way beyond what was done even in the times of the Alter Rebbe, even after Yitzhak Kislev. The Mitteler Rebbe was spreading out and publicizing Chassidus, saying that every single Chassid must travel and stop in every single city they travel to on the way and to repeat Chassidus over there. And he himself was very happily enjoyed whenever he heard Chassidim would be reviewing Chassidus in different places. We said stories yesterday how there was a Chassid who was who slipped into a big hole, with mud up to his neck, and was sitting and learning Chassidus. And the Mitteler Rebbe's wish was, when two Chassidim meet on the street, they should talk about deep concepts of Chassidus, Yichudei Ilah and Yichudei Tata. The Mitteler Rebbe was slandered by one of his, a partnership of one of his distant relatives, who was a partner together with a nephew of Pinchas Reizes, who didn't have children, and they found an ally in Chanovsky. He was the governor of the Vitebsk region, which included Lubavitch, and he was a very uncouth person, and he was more than happy to accept any type of tales that the Mitteler Rebbe was planning to overthrow the Tsar, planning to make his own kingdom, planning to make a deal with the Turkish Sultan, that the shul in Lubavitch is the same size as a Beis HaMikdash, and he's trying to make his own temple. And he was more than happy to take any type of accusation without any proof.
And he was the illegitimate son of the Tsar.
Correct. He's illegitimate son of the Tsar. So yeah, the Tsar's nature, but he had all the efficiencies which came along with that. Now, the word spread all over that the Mitteler Rebbe was going to be detained and there's going to be an investigation. And they heard that it's going to take place on the Sunday after Simchas Torah. On that Shabbos, we said this yesterday. We went through this part yesterday, and on that Shabbos, a very large crowd came to Lubavitch. Chassidim, hundreds of Chassidim from all over. They screamed into Lubavitch for that Shabbos. The Mitteler Rebbe did not change the way he behaved. He reviewed Chassidus for many hours at Shabbos, as he always did, as normal. Along all the cities on the road that the Mitteler Rebbe would pass by on the way to Vitebsk, all those cities, prepared to greet the Mitteler Rebbe as he would travel through the city. The police realized that it wasn't a simple matter. It's going to be a major upheaval. Mitteler Rebbe was respected by the Jews and the non-Jews alike. When police officers arrived in Lubavitch on Sunday, they went straight to the home of the Mitteler Rebbe. They stayed there for about an hour. They spoke with much respect and deference. They politely asked the Mitteler Rebbe to travel with them to the city of Vitebsk to be questioned by the governor. And he could arrange his own transportation, and he could travel at his own pace due to his health. And they said, we want you to leave today, Sunday. We want you to go to the city of Liazna. On Monday, go to the city of Vitebsk. And Mitteler Rebbe said, today, Sunday, I only want to go to only part of the way to the Bromishel, which is much closer. The Bromishel. On Monday, I'm going to go to Liazna, and on Tuesday, I'll come to Vitebsk. And the officers asked their superiors, and they agreed. The wagons left Lubavitch. Another 4 investigators arrived. Some of them were Jewish. They all spoke Yiddish. They tried mingling among the population of Lubavitch, trying to find any incriminating evidence about the Mitteler Rebbe's behavior. They weren't too successful. There was nothing incriminating to find. They interviewed the non-Jewish landlords and peritzim in the area, and they only spoke very highly of the Mitteler Rebbe. They searched the Mitteler Rebbe's home. They looked through every single paper trying to find evidence, and the only thing they found were cheshbonos, calculations of money that was collected to send to tzedakah to the poor Chassidim in Israel. They took all the papers with them. At that point, Eretz Yisrael was under the Ottoman Turkish Empire, so maybe that they're looking for some connections to Turkey. They measured the shul in Lubavitch. Surprise, surprise, was not the same dimensions as the Beis HaMikdash. 11 a.m., the Mitteler Rebbe left Lubavitch. The reaction in the courtyard and the home of the Mitteler Rebbe was undescribable. People burst into tears, were screaming their emotional outburst. Since Motzei Shabbos, this has been going on. And among all this tumult, there's only one person who was perfectly calm and perfectly relaxed. And who was that? The Mitteler Rebbe himself. He accepted Chassidim to Yichidus at Motzei Shabbos like regular. He wrote to Mamorim. Early in the morning, he spent 2 hours with his son-in-law, the Tzemach Tzedek.
Was also his nephew, right?
His nephew and his son-in-law, correct? And when Mitteler Rebbe sat down in the wagon to travel to the Bromishel, he had a sort of a amused smile on his face like about the whole tumult. The wagon began moving. It was quite a scene.
There's actually, let's say the Mitteler Rebbe with the music.
Yeah. The huge entourage began moving all at the same time. Many wagons and then hundreds of people on foot accompanied the Mitteler Rebbe's wagon. And they walked for about 4 hours and moved at a slow pace until about 3 p.m. they came to the city of Bromishel.
I would suspect, you can tell me if I'm wrong, the reason why he was actually finding music is because Hashem is really in charge, and these guys are thinking that they're in charge. Right?
Correct. And a Rebbe, nothing happens to a Rebbe without their agreement and without their foreknowledge, etc. That morning, a group of Chassidim approached the officers, asking if they could accompany the Mitteler Rebbe, and the officers agreed. They themselves enjoyed seeing the Jews giving so much honor and respect to the rabbi, and they were under orders to treat the Mitteler Rebbe with respect. So they continued. They said they could accompany the Mitteler Rebbe. So it was a very large caravan, hundreds of people on foot, and many wagons are passing on the way to the Bromishel. The first town, the village they passed on the way to the Bromishel, once they left Lubavitch, was the village of Barzuvka. And when they came to the village, everyone in the village, Jews and the non-Jews, came to greet, this whole entourage came to greet the Mitteler Rebbe. The mayor, as you want to call it, of the village, he was a Gentile. His name was Starasta. And he was very friendly with the Mitteler Rebbe's and all the Jews. And he presented the Mitteler Rebbe with a sign of respect. He presented the Mitteler Rebbe with bread and salt. That's how they would greet someone as a sign of respect.
Wasn't Chassidic with that with you?
And he brought out bread and wine. Right there, here is bread and salt. And then they went to the next village, and again, all the elders of the village greeted them with bread and salt. And in the next village, Happened the same exact thing in every village along the way. All the elders of the village came out to greet them with bread and salt.
Used to be when you moved into a new apartment. That's when you really brought in bread and salt.
Right, it's a Jewish custom to put bread and salt, right? When you move into a new house, correct. About a mile outside of Dovber Missile, the Chassidim were greeted by many big, huge multitude of people from the city, many Jews and many non-Jews, coming a mile outside of Dovber Missile to greet them and welcome them to the city. Amen. The officers accompanied the caravan were very impressed. Each one saw with their own eyes the huge admiration and respect the Mitteler Rebbe was shown by everybody in the region. When they entered the city of Dovber Missile, the Mitteler Rebbe's son, Reb Nachum, announced that they're going to the main shul. The Mitteler Rebbe went into the second room of the shul, and he told the Chassidim to daven mincha, and then he's going to deliver a mimer on the way to his arrest. It was announced that the Mitteler Rebbe would stay there overnight, and the following morning after Shachris, he would continue traveling to Liozna. All the while, Chassidim sped between the cities on the route to give advance notice of the schedule of the Mitteler Rebbe. There was a Chassid from Vitebsk named Gavriel Yaakov. He traveled to Liozna early Monday morning, and he found the whole city with hundreds of Chassidim from neighboring villages. All came to Liozna, and they're all preparing a big welcome for the Mitteler Rebbe. He told the crowd everything that happened till now. Everyone is showing great respect to the Mitteler Rebbe, and he could travel on his own wagon, accompanied by Chassidim. Chassidim from Vitebsk, who were waiting in Liozna, immediately sent a messenger to Vitebsk to give him an update of the news and to instruct them to ask the minister in Vitebsk to allow the Rebbe, instead of staying in a prison, to stay in a private home and to have minyanim and to be allowed to say chassidus. A new messenger arrived suddenly, looking very confused and worried. Everyone thought something terrible had happened. He said that Baruch Hashem, the Rebbe is fine, but there is an update. He said the opponents of Chassidim, the Misnagdim, seeing how the trip was turning into a sort of victory parade for the Mitteler Rebbe, instead of a humiliating arrest that they were expecting, so they took action and they went to the minister in Vitebsk and they accused that the Chassidim were bribing the officers, and the Mitteler Rebbe is being treated with more honor than a king. And he became furious and immediately sent a rider on horseback with a sealed message that the Rebbe was to stay with officers at night. Nobody was allowed to accompany him except for the Mitteler Rebbe's son and 3 people of his choice. They would continue the journey in a closed wagon, which was guarded with officers, not in his own wagon. Anyone who would accompany the Mitteler Rebbe to Vitebsk will be arrested as well and punished as well. What a beautiful country to live in, right? Without exception. And the Rebbe would not be allowed to stay in a private house in Vitebsk. Instead, he would stay in a prison, in a general cell with other prisoners. This news was a terrible blow and threw the Chassidim into a panic. Nobody knew what to do. And nobody knew what was happening in Dovber Missile. Came by night, and Mitteler Rebbe had not yet arrived to Liozna. He had been scheduled to arrive earlier during the day. At 4 a.m., the group from Vitebsk gave up on waiting, and they hired a wagon to take them in the middle of the night back to Vitebsk. When they arrived, they found in the city of Vitebsk huge crowds all over the streets, even though it's early in the morning. Chassidim, people from Horodok, Nevel, Beshenkovich, Polotsk, all over, waiting in Vitebsk for the Mitteler Rebbe to arrive. The word had spread the Mitteler Rebbe is going to arrive today, accompanied by a huge entourage. Everyone knew that the Mitteler Rebbe said Chassidus on the way and was being treated with tremendous respect everywhere he went. And excitement in Vitebsk was building up. Thousands of people lined the road from Liozna to Vitebsk. What? Trump? No. Thousands of people lined the road from Liozna to Vitebsk. Wherever you look, there were Chassidim walking around.
The Misnagdim did not get what they wanted, but not either, because of the idea was a humiliation, right?
Correct.
Although, to be fair, the Misnagdim, the reason must have been Misnagdim who were like uncouth.
Correct.
Opposed to the other ones who would not speak so well.
Correct. The group which had arrived early that morning from Liazna, it didn't have the heart to tell them that the party is over. And there wasn't going to be any procession or entourage. When night came, the Mitteler Rebbe had not yet come with his everyone. People started to get worried. It was already dark. More people started to arrive in Vitebsk. They knew what had happened. Word spread in Liazna. The Mitteler Rebbe was placed in a private house under armed guard in Vitebsk. In Liazna, the Mitteler Rebbe was under armed guard. And nobody was allowed to visit him. Nobody was allowed in or out. That morning, 2 wagons with heavy security came to Vitebsk, and they came quietly into the city from a different route, from the other side of the city where people were not waiting. At 9 p.m., Chassidim heard from Dr. Heibenthal, who was friendly with the minister of in the city of Vitebsk, that the Mitteler Rebbe was placed in a prison, a regular prison, and he begged the minister to please allow the Mitteler Rebbe to have his own room in the central police station. Minister agreed, and the Mitteler Rebbe, with the son and 3 Chassidim that he chose, were taken from the cell and given their own room. The doctor said that he had visited the Mitteler Rebbe and he had given the Mitteler Rebbe medicine for a fever that he had developed on the road. And that's all anybody knew. For 2 long weeks, there was no news. Right? There's no such thing as holding people not more than 24 hours without counsel. None of that. Nobody saw the Mitteler Rebbe. No information was coming and going from the police. Twice a day, Chassidim were allowed to bring food to the police station. They would go to the door of the police station. One of the 3 Chassidim who were incarcerated with the Mitteler Rebbe would emerge, accompanied by an armed guard. He would take the food and give it to the person by the door and receive the dishes from the last delivery. And none of them were allowed to say a word or to make a single sound. Chassidim begged Dr. Heibenthal to do something, but there's nothing that he could do. It was too sensitive. On Tez Zayin Cheshvan, the 16th of Cheshvan, Dr. Heibenthal called a meeting of the most prominent Chassidim in town. He said that on Tuesday, there was a party in the home of the minister. 2 of the princes and landowners, very wealthy people, were invited. One of them, his name was Lubavitch, and he actually owned the area where Lubavitch was, and he was very respectful and on good terms with Mitteler Rebbe. He said that to give free lumber to the Mitteler Rebbe and his family, to build a shul on his own expense in Lubavitch. And another landowner, a prince, his name was Tzekret. They both knew Dr. Heibenthal, who's also not Jewish, and they all knew of the Mitteler Rebbe. He asked them to speak to the minister and to tell them how beloved and respected the Mitteler Rebbe is by everybody, Jews and non-Jews alike, and that he's a holy person and a tzaddik. They did so, and the day before Wednesday, they went back to the minister and they spoke to the minister about the Mitteler Rebbe. The minister listened, and he answered that from now on, 20 people will be allowed to go in to daven with the Mitteler Rebbe 3 times a day for Shacharis, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, and twice a week the Mitteler Rebbe will be allowed to say Chassidus for 50 people. In addition, Dr. Heibenthal visited the Mitteler Rebbe, and he said Mitteler Rebbe was ill, and they checked him, and they saw there's nothing wrong with him physically. But he told them that the Mitteler Rebbe is feeling the way he does because he's not able to interact with his Chassidim, and therefore he needs to be able to say twice a week Chassidus to his Chassidim. As it was known, the Mitteler Rebbe was so full of Chassidus that if he pricked his veins, Chassidus would come out, literally, not blood.
He wouldn't be good actually for the doctors.
No.
We can't stay.
That morning, Dr. Heibenthal visited the minister, and the minister told him, not knowing that it came from Dr. Heibenthal, that 2 princes had vouched for the Mitteler Rebbe, and he was allowing the above-mentioned things to take place. The next day, Friday, the office of the Interior Minister made an announcement that from now on, 20 people will be allowed in 3 times a day to the Mitteler Rebbe, and 50 people will be allowed in twice a week to hear Chassidus. Within an hour, there was already a raffle, and 20 winners were allowed to daven Shacharis with the Mitteler Rebbe, another 20 for Mincha, another 20 for Ma'ariv Kabbalah Shabbos, and then so on every day for Shacharis and Musaf. And 50 winners got to hear the Maimer and Shabbos, and 50 winners once more during the week. So, is any trial happening? This was communist Russia, right? Not communist Russia, Tsarist Russia. Not as bad, but pretty bad still. And today is Gan Eden in comparison over there.
Putin's not exactly a softie.
No, but nothing in comparison to any of those two. The entire case hinged on the papers that had been confiscated from the Mitteler Rebbe's house and on the letters to Pinchas Reizes. The opponents of Masnagim told the minister that the Chassidim cannot be trusted. Whoever was given the job of translating the papers into Russian, Chassidim are definitely going to bribe them and take out any incriminating parts. Therefore, the translating has to be done by one of their own, a leading Misnagid in the city of Vitebsk.
Oh.
Chassidim were worried that the translator is going to purposely add a few suspicious details to his translation. But Baruch Hashem, the translation was a faithful, exact translation to the Hebrew. It was a Yirush Shamayim. The papers were calculations of the money that was collected and being sent to support the poor in Eretz Yisrael under Koil Chabad. Everything was perfectly legal, but there was a worry it might look suspicious because it was, after all, part of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. A bigger problem was a letter which had the extra one added in, the kuf.
Yeah. All
right. Imagine if you're tasked with making an investment for a big company, and they wanted to invest $10 million, and by mistake you added a zero and you invested $100 million, and then they lost it all. They wouldn't be too happy, right? So the Mitteler Rebbe managed to collect in a short amount of time 4,000 rubles, and that was the Mitteler Rebbe's handwriting, and the person added a kuf, 103 to 104,000 rubles, saying, how could the Mitteler Rebbe amass such a huge amount in such a short time, only because he's planning a revolution, right? There was no way to prove that it was forged. So first the minister had a private meeting with Mitteler Rebbe, and who explained to him that his father, the Alter Rebbe, had many Chassidim who lived in Eretz Yisrael, and the colleagues of the Maggid, Bavram Kalisker and Mendel Haradoker, and they were all extremely poor, and the only money they were able to survive with was the money they received from Russia. As for the forged letter, the Mitteler Rebbe said, yes, 12 years ago, I traveled to Lubavitch, and I had a large sum of money, nowhere close to 104,000 rubles. I wish it was true. The kuf, the 100, is absolutely fake. He was very impressed by the Mitteler Rebbe, and he wanted to believe him. However, before he could make a decision, he ordered the Mitteler Rebbe should face his accusers in person and let them state their case. So there was a big, large official meeting. The Mitteler Rebbe came to the meeting in a royal wagon fit for a king, dressed in white clothes that he would wear on Shabbos. He had the appearance resplendent and shining in the appearance of a malach. Chassidim were very nervous. The minister would be angry when he saw this display, but the opposite happened. When he saw the Mitteler Rebbe, minister of justice, not the governor, right? He was immediately offered him a chair to sit down, and he talked to him with great respect. Then the accuser of the Mitteler Rebbe arrived, and the Mitteler Rebbe immediately went on the offensive, accusing him of fabricating a story because of a personal grudge that he had. And the minister turned around very sternly and said, is that true? And he wasn't able to get it out clearly, but he said, no, it's completely true. During the course of the discussion, the accuser turned to the Mitteler Rebbe and he wanted to tell him something. And he said, Rebbe, how could he say that? The Mitteler Rebbe immediately turned to the minister and he says, you see, he accuses me of being a liar, a traitor, and he still calls me Rebbe. Because he knows the truth and he knows that everything he's accusing me of are completely lies. The accuser became confused and started stumbling over his own words. Couldn't say a single complete sentence. And the minister told him, that's it, I heard enough. And he adjourned the meeting. And the Mitteler Rebbe left the meeting victorious, with honor, went back to the police station. Now, you would think after this, the Mitteler Rebbe will be let go. Well, leave it to the government. But that means that even from above, from Shemayim, the decree against Chassidus was not yet abolished entirely. On Shabbos at 9th of Kislev, while the Mitteler Rebbe was in the middle of saying a maimer, Ata echad l'shimcha echad, That day was his birthday. Also later, a year later, the day he would pass away, he suddenly stopped and he said, make room, the Tata is done. My father, the Alter Rebbe, arrived, he's here. The next day, Sunday, 10th of Kislev, he sent a letter, and all these letters are preserved. He sent a letter with his daughters. Mitteler Rebbe had the most children of any Rebbe, you know that. He had 12 or 13 children. He had 2 daughters who passed away during his lifetime, both named Esther. One is Esther something, and one is plain Esther.
I was saying, imagine that what happened was actually like sort of like naming the one Esther after the other, right?
Correct.
Probably yes.
Probably. Polyester, yeah. So the next day, Yud Kislev, he sent a letter with his daughters, and this letter is preserved till today. And to the governor. When they arrived at the governor's house, they burst into tears. And I can actually share with you on the screen a copy of the letter. Maybe we'll do that soon.
It was sent actually with his daughter Esther, right?
No, I think a different daughter.
Oh, different daughter.
I have a copy of the actual letter. No, that's Mitteler's handwritings. No, so I don't have it right here. And he sent a letter with his daughters to the governor. When it came to the governor's house, when they arrived at the governor, they burst into tears, asking him to end his entire saga and to allow the father to go home. After reading the letter, he told the daughters to calm down. Your father will be released today. By the time they came back, the guards already had been told to leave, and the imprisonment was over. It said the messengers arrived to the Mitteler Rebbe's house as he was saying Tehillim for the 10th day of the month, which is at Yud Kislev, and he's saying the words, my soul is redeemed in peace. Mitteler Rebbe was in the middle of saying Tehillim with the words Padav Shalom Nafshi. The guards left, and immediately the entire house was filled with Chassidim. The Mitteler Rebbe sat down and said a mimer in public for as many people for the first time since Shabbos before he was arrested, and he left Vitebsk at the same day to go to Lubavitch. Now, Yud Kislev never became as large of a Yom Tov as the 19th of Kislev for several reasons, but one of them being that the Mitteler Rebbe passed away a year later, on the 9th of Kislev, the day before. Mitteler Rebbe told the Chassidim he should be freilich, should be happy and joyous on the day of his release. And he passed away on the 9th of Kislev. And the next day, which is the first anniversary of his complete release, because remember, it was twice that he was released on the 10th of Kislev, once. And the first anniversary, and they were all, Mitteler Rebbe was passed away in the city of Nezhin, and he's buried there. And they made a sad tune, which says, the Rebbe geheißen freilich sein. The Rebbe said we should be happy. We have to listen to the instructions of the Mitteler Rebbe. But the Rebbe geheißen freilich sein, freilich soll man sein. If the Rebbe said we have to be happy, we have to be happy. Mm-hmm. And it was a sad song that they sang. Eventually, in more recent times, it's become popular again, but as a happy tune. Mm-hmm. Yud Kislev is a day when the accusation against the spread of Chassidus was abolished. Any limitations that we have are done. Now, questions like this. We know the Alter Rebbe was arrested because the famous example, which started off in the times of the Maggid Mizrich, that one time Pinchas Karatzer saw a page of Chassidus on the floor, on the ground, blowing around in the wind, and he became very angry. He said the secrets of the Torah are on the ground, and the Alter Rebbe defended that to him by saying the famous example. There was a king who had an only son, and the son became very sick, and they called all the doctors, and no one could find a cure. And they called one doctor, and the doctor said that if you take a certain precious gem and you crush it up and you mix it with water, if you take a precious gem, a certain very precious stone, and you grind it up and you mix it with water and you feed it to your son, that can make him better. And they looked all over, and the only they could not find this precious stone anywhere except it was a center stone on the king's crown, on the royal crown. And they asked the king, should we take the precious stone off your crown in order to make a medicine? And he said, definitely do it, for sure. Because if my son does not live, what is there to continue for? What is the purpose of a royal crown if my son does not live? In the meantime, the son's condition got so critical that he was barely able to eat or drink. And they asked the king, should we take off the precious stone from the crown now? And the king said, yes. Because crush it up and do it immediately, post haste. Because if even one drop gets in, that might be able to make the child, my son, better. So he says, Chassidus, teachings of Chassidus are the precious crown of Hashem, most precious jewel of Hashem. These are the Torah of Mashiach. And it's being given out to everybody because the Jewish people are in such a situation where even if there's a doubt that it might make a little bit of Jews alive and make them excited about Hashem and Torah again, and mitzvahs to do it again, it's worth spreading it unconditionally. Magen Mizrich later on said, the Alter Rebbe, that there was a big accusation in heaven against Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe took it away. Later on, the Alter Rebbe spread Chassidus even more. Chassidus Chabad. Chabad is intellectual. Until then, Chassidus was much more understanding. Was emotional. Belief in the tzaddik, and tzaddik will connect me to Hashem. The Alter Rebbe says, belief is excellent, and you got to understand. Not just know, not just do things because you have to. And that's an excellent thing, but in addition, you have to understand a chachma. And then he was arrested again until Yitas Kislev. It became a big victory when he was freed. And that's a big Yom Tov coming up. And then came the Mitteler Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was a way of chachma. What's chachma? A dot. Mitteler Rebbe was bina, expansion. The depth of the river, the width of the river, the length of the river, spreading out everywhere. Now, if you remember, what was a pasuk? What was a verse the Alter Rebbe and the Mitteler Rebbe were saying when they were redeemed? Pada shalom nafshi. My soul is redeemed in peace. And when Alter Rebbe writes, when I was reading the pasuk of Pada b'shalom nafshi, I was redeemed in peace from the God of peace. Shalom means peace. There's two ways of a war. One is to win a war with fighting, and one is to win a war with peace. When the enemy is so awed by you that they're never going to go into a war, and they come in a way of peace. Now, the Alter Rebbe, when he was freed, it says even the ministers were wondering, how is it possible that, he got freed completely exonerated in such a way? In Chassidus, you don't have too many questions, answers. You have it mainly in Gemara. Why? Because Gemara is called Machshakim HaShivani. Questions and answers when the Torah comes down into physical ways, into physical examples. And over there, the light of Hashem is hidden and you can have questions. All questions come when you don't have clarity. Chassidus is godly. Talk about godly concepts. So you don't have so many questions. Rather, it's clear godliness. Chachma is you have no questions. For example, Chachma is the source, coming up with an idea. Bina is adding on to that idea. The foundation, you have no questions. When you're building the room, when you're building the floors, how should I do it like this? Should I do it like that? This the right way, that the right way. The Alter Rebbe's idea of Shalom, of Chachma, of he was redeemed in peace, there's no questions. Chassidus is clear. Mitteler Rebbe brought Chassidus down even further than the Alter Rebbe. In details, Bina, understanding. Taking every, what Hauser Semach Tzedek would say, we'll make from every vart a kvart. From every word of the Alter Rebbe, he would make a barrel. Explaining to the depth and to the width and the breadth of the knowledge, that people could understand it, and every level, whether you're a very big scholar, you can understand, a very simple person could understand. And he brought out the novelty of Chassidus much more than the Alter Rebbe did. It's not just how much was revealed of Chassidus, and how much peace there was, but in the quality as well. In this week's Parsha, in the very first Aliyah, we have V'shafti b'sholom el beis avi. Yaakov Avinu says to Hashem, he had a dream, and in the dream, I will return in peace to my father's house, my father's home. Right? Instead of giving away the land of Israel piece by piece, let's have peace in the Middle East. Peace means be-shalom, two types of peace. There's a peace that comes from above and a peace that comes from below. What does that mean? There's a peace that comes because you have a bully, someone stronger than both of you, and therefore they're both going to behave. Two enemies will behave, and they will go along with each other. That's called peace from above. There's a peace from below, which happens when two sides themselves want to make peace. I'll give you an example. From this week's Parsha. Lavan and Yaakov. Lavan, later on, he chased after Yaakov at the end of the Parsha, and he wanted to attack Yaakov. And it ended up that the night before he attacked Yaakov, Hashem, God himself, came to Lavan in a dream, and he told him, be careful, don't attack Yaakov at all. So the next day, when Lavan came to Yaakov, did Lavan attack Yaakov? Did he attack Yaakov? No.
What Hashem?
Hashem told him not to.
Exactly.
So there was peace. There wasn't war. Was it peace from Lavan's end? No, it was peace because he was scared of Hashem.
Exactly.
Hashem said, you better not attack Yaakov or else. But later on, Yaakov and Lavan made a agreement, a covenant. And when they made that covenant and agreement, that was peace coming from below. They themselves made the agreement of peace. So there's two different types of agreements that could be made. One from above, and they're being sort of forced their hand, whether forced or overawed, or whether one that they themselves want to do it. Chassidic describes the difference between emunah, which is belief in Hashem, and the idea of shalom, peace. Emunah is understanding. There's no two ways about it. When you have emunah, when you have belief in Hashem, the truth shines and goes through. Chassidic Chabad accomplishes that not only do we believe, but that belief comes down also into our knowledge. We understand Chassidus with our own minds. At the end of the day, Chassidus is based, when you come to deeper and deeper and deeper, and it finally is based on emunah, it's based on belief in Hashem. But even the understanding and the intellect of a person is based on a belief in Hashem. And therefore, it's possible to be disagreements, even in Chassidus. First, Chassidus is idea of shalom. Kivarabim, to doing it among many. To bring shalom, to bring peace, can be in many ways. The famous example is a Sanhedrin. What's Sanhedrin? Dovi?
I guess for Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
You have like 72.
72, exactly.
Exactly.
71, actually.
Right. You have actually a lower one of actually like 23.
Correct.
And we're learning it actually.
You have a lower one, and it's 3.
That's a Beis Din, right? The court of law. And a Sanhedrin is a lower Sanhedrin of 23, and the highest Sanhedrin was 71. So the Sanhedrin, the way they would work is they would, whenever they would rule something, whenever they would have a decision, it would be a long roundtable discussion. First, they would have discussions one-on-one, two people divide in pairs of 2 or 3, and later on they would all go around, everyone say their opinion. At the end, let's say out of Sanhedrin of 71, let's say 50 said innocent, 21 said guilty. Then the person will go innocent. But those 21 are not just merely agreeing to the 50. That's one way of shalom, of peace. So we agree to you because you're the majority. Another way, explains in the Rebbe is that the 21 agree to the 50 in a much way that they're mevato, that they themselves now agree to the majority. We now are part of the majority, and what they say is correct. And if you ask us what the halacha is like that because we ourselves agree. So shalom, peace, explains when two Jews meet, one says Shalom Aleichem, first one says Shalom Aleichem, the next one says Aleichem Shalom. What's the famous line about that? Because one Jew says one way, the other one says the opposite. Right? So I say Shalom Aleichem, peace to you. I want to say Aleichem Shalom. But the question is, why don't we say Alecha Shalom, peace to you, in singular? Why Aleichem? To all of you, peace. However, even in this little joke that a Jew has to say the opposite, there is something good. Because Shalom is saying is peace. There's two types of peace. Peace is when one agrees to the other, or because of an external reason, but there's only one idea. So I love to make peace. Everyone should agree with me. That's one way of doing peace. The other way of agreeing, another way of making peace is that everyone, can say, agrees together, either on a common ground or a common denominator, or that each one gives in on a few points. When two Jews meet, you can have two separate people. We say, Shalom Aleichem, peace upon to you. Although Aleichem, we're plural, we're more people than one, but we're bringing Aleichem onto both of us, Shalom, peace. Both of us together will bring down peace. There's two levels of peace. First one is Shalom Aleichem. I'm ready to have peace, but that means either you're right or I'm right. And the second one says, Aleichem Shalom. We could both be right and still get along, still have peace. Right, so the shalom is not coming just from one. The shalom is coming from both of them together. So not just from above, but it's coming from below to above. We can now explain the difference of the Alter Rebbe and the Mitteler Rebbe. They both said Pad of Shalom, redeemed in peace. Chachma is wisdom. It does not have a lot of detail connected to it. Bina has a lot of detail. Alter Rebbe is Chachma, and the Mitteler Rebbe is Bina. And we're the generation of Malchus, which we're going to have Mashiach. The difference of Shalom Aleichem and Aleichem Shalom. Shalom is accomplished from Chachma and from Bina. The Shalom from the times of the Alter Rebbe, the idea of Chachma, is that all the questions are just gone. Because I know there's an answer, even though I don't know exactly what the answer is. Because the truth is shining, the godliness is shining. It's so intense that all the questions are gone. So through Chachma, through wisdom, becomes Shalom. But the Shalom won't affect anything that's not on that caliber of Chachma. Bina, which is what happened by the Alter Rebbe, by the Mitteler Rebbe, is that even from a lower level, there is Shalom, there is peace. Shalom from below, from all the details. Chassidus from the Mitteler Rebbe and onwards is in a way of from below to above. That Chassidus affects us not just in our belief and not just in our knowledge, but in our wisdom and our day-to-day life. We understand it, and to the same way you learn a Gemara, we should learn a topic in Chassidus. This week's Parsha, we have Yaakov left Be'er Sheva and he went to Haran. Be'er Sheva was a Jerusalem of today, let's say. Be'er Sheva, he had many, that's where Yitzchak lived. That's where the yeshiva of Aver was, of Shem and Aver was in Be'er Sheva. That was the capital of Torah of the world. Yaakov was in his tent. He did not leave yeshiva for 14 years, even once, sitting and learning Torah. As we had a previous share talking about the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, you recall that what did they learn, and who was there, and who was the Talmidim. And the yeshiva of Shem and Aver was in the same city as the yeshiva of Yitzchak and Avram. And they learned different types of things. There was a godly type of learning, and Yaakov learned in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. Yeshiva of Aver, rather. Shem passed away. So Yaakov leaves the best place in the world, and instead he goes to Haran. Haran is a place of swindlers. And what does Lavan mean, Davi? What does base Lavan mean?
A house of white.
House of white. Can you think about a house of white? White House. The house of swindlers, right?
Yeah.
Lavan, house of the White House. And he has to go there. He has to go to the place where it's very immoral and it's very indecent. And he's very worried about it. He doesn't want to be there. And however, over there, he gave birth to all his children, besides for Binyamin, who continued in the ways of Hashem. continuing the ways of the Torah. And he also had all of his children were tzaddikim, or righteous people. And he did not lose any of his Torah during all of his years in Lavan's house. And he himself gained from that. How did he gain? Because if you remember, when Yaakov left Beersheba, he went to Haran, and on the way he stopped by Har Moriah to daven, Beisel, and Har Moriah greeted him, and he stopped there and he davened Ma'ariv. Why did Yaakov Avinu institute Ma'ariv? Ma'ariv night prayer? Because he had 12 children at home, so he wanted a way to get out at night. So he started them. They started Ma'ariv. So Yaakov Avinu is Yaakov Avinu is in the house of Lavan, but over there he has all his children who are born and they are tzaddikim. He had a dream before he left Israel, before he left Eretz Israel to go to the house of Lavan, where he slept, that there's a big ladder with angels climbing up and down. Later on, when he's in the land of Haran, and it was time for him to go back to Eretz Yisrael, the last aliyah of this week's parsha, it says he met the angels of God. Wow. So in the beginning, might die in a moment. In the beginning of the parsha, he had a dream about the angels of God. At the end of the parsha, he didn't have to have a dream. He saw it while he's awake. The level of Yaakov at the end of the parsha was much greater than it was in the beginning of the parsha. He was able to handle angels of Hashem while he's awake. Like we said, Moshe Rabbeinu and Shmuel could see Hashem Nevuah while they're awake. And as we're learning in Kunter Sumayan, all the other Nevi'im would fall on their face and be called them Meshugana, crazy, extreme. Yaakov was able to see angels of Hashem while he's awake after the house of Lavan, and not while he was in Eretz Yisrael, while he was after 14 years of learning Torah nonstop. And the lesson for this is we have to leave our comfort zone, our land of Eretz Yisrael, and go out even to Haran. We will not lose. We will, if we're going out to affect another Jew or another person, will affect the world around us, we'll only gain from it. We'll not lose, and we ourselves will be elevated to a much higher spiritual level.
And linguistically, this week's parsha introduces a linguistic
Correct. Yigar Sadusa.
Linguistic ambiguity into the next one.
Another thing added on from that
can be the agents from this week's parsha that sent Asa.
Correct.
It can be simply messengers.
Correct. Yes.